The wind came down from the shivering sea like the sigh of a wounded giant, rolling across the jagged basalt cliffs of pike, and scattering spindrift against the weather-worn keeps that clung to their crags like barnacles to a whale. Jon Snow felt the salt sting on his cheeks and tasted iron on his tongue, as though the sea itself had offered him communion. 4 days earlier he had ridden from Winterfell at the head of a quiet escort, cloak clasped by the direwolf of Stark on one shoulder and the kraken of Greyjoy on the other. 2 pins, 2 houses, 1 promise yet unspoken. Now standing on a swaying bridge that looked more rope than timber beneath the gray wash of dawn, he tested the weight of that promise in his mind and found it heavier than Longclaw. Asha Greyjoy met him halfway across the splitting span, boots planted wide as if her feet were hammered into the planks. Her black hair whipped free of its braids, lashing across her brow. But her eyes, those gray-green shards of sea-glassed steel, never wavered. Jon inclined his head, water-beaded curls brushing his collar. He had known many kinds of silence in his short but crowded life, yet none so taut as the hush that formed between them now. Below, the surf crashed like a war drum at their feet, and above, gulls wheeled, shrieking to unseen gods. A year had passed since the death of Balon Greyjoy, and 6 months since the Dragon Queen's fiery conquest on the mainland. Ashes drifted still between kingdoms, and the Iron Islands found themselves free of Euron's madness, but girdled by grief, famine, and fear. Asha had taken the Salt Throne amid lightning and leaping flames. An omen, said the priests, that the drowned god and the storm god contended for her soul. She laughed when they whispered it, claiming she would drink them both dry if they bothered her again. But laughter was another mask that sat uneasily upon her face these days. The crown, if such a thing could be called crown, a circlet of black-wrought iron shaped like intertwined tentacles, bit deep enough that Jon saw tiny crescents of blood along her hairline each night. They shared counsel. Yet share counsel they did, first by raven, then by sealed ship, then at Deepwood Motte beneath the pines, where snowmelt dripped like tears onto moss, and Theon stood at his sister's right hand, gaunt yet unbowed. There, amid the scent of resin and damp earth, Asha's men had raised horns to toast a union no bard would dare imagine. The wolf of winter and the kraken's daughter, binding sea to snow. It was a marriage of survival, some said, Winterfell's larders for the island's fleets, or of vengeance, for both had lost brothers to the blades of kings. But in the hush between the calls of the horn owls that evening, Jon sensed something stranger blooming. A chance that 2 ragged souls weathered by cruelty might yet grow together like grafted trees, bearing fruit neither could alone. Now the priests waited in the drowned chapel carved into the cliff face beneath them, torches guttering. Salt water pooled around the stone altar, and bone-white barnacles glimmered under the flames like the eyes of dead fish. There would be no Septon's 7-pointed star, no godswood canopy. Only the sea, the storm, and a pair of blood-stiff flags that bore entwined direwolf and kraken. It was Jon who broke the silence first. "You look tired, Asha." "So do you," she said, flexing her gloved fingers on the bridge rope. "Too late to flee, crow. I've been a wolf longer than a crow, and I a kraken longer than a queen." She replied, "Yet here we are, playing at titles." Jon braced as a gust rattled the span. "Call it playing if you wish. The snows will fall heavier than any man alive remembers. If we remain children, we die. And now, then best we wed as warriors." Asha's smile was sharp as a cutlass. "Come. The tide waits for no lover." They descended together, cloaks snapping. Inside the water-pounded chapel, the elder priest Aaron Danfair lifted his voice in a rasping hymn. Gray hair limp with brine, he poured seawater over their clasped hands, muttering old words about salt and stone and the void between waves. Jon felt the chill bite to the bone, yet Asha's grip never slackened. "Let these 2 be one," the priest croaked. "Let the kraken's arms wrap the dire wolf, and the wolf's howl calls storms to smash their foes. What is dead may never die, but rises again, harder, stronger." Their vows were spoken in the tongue of the Ironborn, and answered in the harsh syllables of the North. When it was done, and their wrists bound by kelp. Asha pressed her forehead to Joan's. Her breath smelled of sea salt and sour ale. Lord Snow becomes Lord Kraken, she murmured. Or perhaps I shall be Lady Wolf. Neither, he answered. We are what the world has need of. Titles will follow. Many. The feast afterward was a lean affair. Salt cod soaked in butter, black bread, a stew of seal meat and onions. Yet the hall rang with rough laughter. The Ironborn roared shanties, their voices hoarse from years of raiding and sudden repentance. Northern men, fewer but taller, matched them cup for cup, sharing tales of whites and wendigos. Asha sat on John's left, slamming her drinking horn down each time a boast grew too large, demanding proof by arm wrestle or knife throw. John listened, spoke little, and watched the faces under the torchlight. Scarred cheeks, missing ears, frost-bitten lips, all survivors, all hungry for tomorrow. When midnight tolled on the distant bell tower that creaked like a dying whale, the new queen and her wolf-born husband climbed the splintering stairs to a turret chamber. The room smelled of wet wool and pitch. Rain battered the shutters. In that hush, unarmored, they stood uncertain as children. Asha broke the moment first, shrugging off her jerkin, scar-lined arms bare beneath oilskin. John traced the silver path of an old axe wound across her collarbone. I would have let the maester stitch it, she said softly. But I was at sea, and thread is scarce on salt winds. I have stitches of my own, John replied, lifting his shirt to show the ragged white starburst where Ollie's dagger had pierced him. You heal, or you don't. Asha nodded. She kissed the scar once, as though sealing it, then stepped back. Outside, thunder cracked. John drew her to the bed like a man stepping from a cliff. Half fear, half faith that wings might sprout before the rocks. The shutters rattled, lightning flooded the chamber, and the world fell away beneath the roar of rain. By dawn, ravens beat their wings southward and east, carrying news of the marriage across a realm still reeling from dragons. In White Harbor, Lord Manderley read the parchment with watered wine and whispered, "Seas and snow." At River Run, Edmure shook his head, wondering whether Blackfish would have laughed or wept. And far to the east, in the Red Keep Solar, Daenerys Targaryen traced the words with a finger that quivered like a drawn bowstring. John. She breathed, and the dragon fire in her blood stirred. Yet the North cared little for southern hearts. Winterfell's courtyard filled with ironborn longships, whose carved prows rose like frozen leviathans above the fresh fallen snow. The stark banners flapped beside the kraken's tentacles. Children gawked at sailors spinning daggers between grease-black fingers. Sailors spat curses at the height of the wall-borne ramparts. Sansa watched from the gatewalk, gloved hands laced, her face an unreadable mask. She had greeted her brother and his new bride with warmth enough for courtiers to note, but that warmth cooled quickly in council. Grain stores dwindled. Refugees choked the roads. The Dragon Queen's tax collectors hovered like crows. To feed the North and the Isles together would drain larders by midwinter. Yet Asha had brought promise of fleet loads of herring and cod, of seal pelts to barter, of sailing routes through broken ice that could speed trade to distant Ibn. She spoke with maps, and with calloused fingers pointing to unseen currents, and Sansa listened, weighing risks like stones. On the third night of their arrival, a tempest of ice crystals sheared across the battlements, moaning like specters. John stood on the rampart in a cloak thick with rime. Asha found him there, staring north beyond the spears of the dead woods to the unseen heart of winter. "You look for ghosts," she said. "I hear them." He tapped the hilt of Longclaw. "The wall fell under dragonfire, Asha. But the whites still roam. We have days, perhaps weeks, before they push south again. Bendau. Then we give them iron and fire," she said, leaning against the parapet. "My ships can strike the coast behind them, torch their supply of flesh. They feed on corpses, do they not? Let them starve. They feel no hunger, Jon answered, mouth a grim line. But they may be slowed. Asha's grin was wolfish. Then we slow them till spring. That night, the war table in the great hall groaned under stones, carved like galleys and deerwolves. The North would muster at Moat Cailin, drawing the dead into the bogs while ironborn ships landed raiding parties along the coast, from Seaguard to Flint's Finger. Tormund Giantsbane offered to ride east and rally free folk still wandering, the unpledged 50 bowmen of Black Tide. Plans were sworn by torchlight, sealed with wine. Only Sansa hesitated. And if the Dragon Queen takes this as rebellion? She asked, voice quiet. Jon met her gaze. I will send word. She knows the greater enemy. Does she? Sansa's eyes held the memory of ash drifting over King's Landing. Her dragons burn bright, brother. They burn everything. Jon thought of the fire-gray smoke, of small teeth in a child's skull powdered beneath rubble, of heat that melted flesh from bone. He thought of how Daenerys had wept when she saw the carnage, insisting the bells were a trick. He thought of how he had held her shaking shoulders, and how neither of them could find forgiveness in the other's eyes. Yet he said only, "We ask, not command. But we do not wait." Autumn waned. Snow piled like a smothering blanket on the high road, turning wagons to tombs. Iron-borne longships, refitted with tar-smeared hulls and iron-caged braziers, cracked through the last slush of the Bight and kissed the stony beaches of the narrow sea. At Winterfell, smiths hammered ice-rimmed steel into hooks meant to tear through white flesh, while glassmakers in White Harbor ground obsidian arrowheads. Sansa oversaw distribution, parchment scrolls staining her fingertips with ink. The girl who had dreamed of lemon cakes and songs now calculated how many pounds of dragonglass a starving household could trade for a winter cloak. One morning before the first fleet sailed, Jon found Asha in the Godswood, snow dusting her shoulders. She knelt before the heart tree, studying the weirwood's reddened tears. "You say your gods have no faces," she said as he approached. "But this one watches me." Jon pressed a gloved hand to the trunk. "He watches us all." She rose, brushing snow from her breeches. "Then let him see this." She drew a dagger and sliced her palm. Blood spattered the snow like red rain. Jon started, but she caught his wrist, lifted it to her lips, and kissed his gloved knuckles. Her blood smeared the leather. "For the North and the Isles," she whispered. "For salt and snow." Jon turned her wounded hand, pressing his mouth to the cut, tasting the copper and salt that bound their fates. The day the Iron Wolf fleet set sail, 1,000 ravens launched from Maester Wolkan's rookery in jagged black waves. Their wings carried messages of alliance and war, of dark tidings and colder dawns. In Old Town's towering citadel, an archmaester set aside his glass candle, frowning at the sigil-sealed scroll. On Dragonstone, Tyrion Lannister pondered each stroked word, flames dancing in his mismatched eyes. "Sea and snow," he murmured. "Little sister, what game are you playing?" Far away, across the sunset sea, where red skies touched black water, the last of the summer islanders read the news and wondered if their spice-rich galleys might yet find harbor in a world cracking beneath ice. But the dead cared for none of it. They marched, silent as dawn frost, southward still. Winter's heart beat fiercest at Hardhome's ruins, where shattered longhouses jutted like broken ribs from a grave of salt-frosted bones. There the Night's King. Some said, a Stark of old, others a cruel remnant of sorcerous war, raised arms of black ice toward a slate sky, and called the drowned to rise. Up from the shallows they came, bloated fishermen, children tangled in nets, mothers who had clutched infants as waves swallowed them. Their eyes glimmered ice blue, brine steamed off their flesh where winter winds scoured them clean. When the Iron Wolf fleet rounded Skagos Point and saw those shapeless hordes gathering, sails cracked and oars bit the sea. Asha herself stood at the prow of Black Wind, hair braided tight, greaves polished. Jon rode behind, a cloak as white as foam, Longclaw held ready. Theon on Seaborn, haggard but fierce, grinned at the specters on the coast. Drums thundered across water. Ironborn archers loosed barbed shafts, wrapped in pitch. The arrows hissed, flaming, arcing into ranks of salt-soaked dead. Bodies ignited, sputtering green-black, but the dead did not scream. They marched into the surf, water boiling around their ankles. Asha barked orders: crab-claw maneuver, trident break, and longships spread like the fingers of a skeletal hand. 3 circled wide, dropping casks of oil. Theon's crew lit them. The sea bloomed with fire, and steam clouds billowed. Jon leapt first onto the shore, snow flying beneath his boots. The beach writhed with whites half buried in silt. Longclaw's Valyrian steel glimmered with frost as it cut through brittle cartilage and sinew, severing arms that crawled like crabs. Behind him came the wolves of Winterfell. Shields painted with direwolves, gnashing krakens. They advanced in shield wall, ashes blasting their cheeks as flames met sleet. Hours bled into night. The dead fell, yet numbers grew. On the ridge above the bay, the Night's King watched, moonlight fracturing across armor crafted of nightmares. Each time a living soul fell beneath an ice-bright blade, shadows rose beside him. Jon felt weariness sink claws into his marrow. Flaming arrowheads dwindled, oil leaked onto black wet sand. Then the long howl of a war horn echoed from the sea. Asha's flagship veered broadside, and from its deck, iron-caged braziers were upended. Molten pitch cascaded like a waterfall of midnight fire, searing undead ranks. Steam geysers exploded, brine rained down sizzling. White stumbled, cooked within bone-white shells. In that moment of terror, Jon drove forward, carving a path toward the ridge. He met the Night's King where sea spray turned to ice crystals in mid-air. Steel met frozen obsidian. When blades struck, the clash sounded like cracking glaciers. Jon felt ghosts of every dead brother surge up his sword arm. He roared their fury, but the Night's King smiled a smile carved from eternal winter. Longclaw shuddered, ice blossoming along its fuller. Asha, appearing from the smoke, cast her daggers. One struck the Night's King's pauldron, the other sank beside his collarbone. Cracks. Spider-webbed, blue-white. But still, he moved. And then, a horn blast rolled low across the dark, deeper than thunder, deeper than whale song. A second, rising, shook the very cliff bones. Out of the gloom beyond the bay loomed a shape like night given wings. Dragonfire suffused its open maw. Drogon. Shadow black and monstrous, plunged from clouds and vomited light. The beach burst into gold and scarlet. Daenerys Targaryen clung to the spines at his neck, violet eyes blazing. Her arrival shattered the frozen calm. Ice melted, whites shrieked as flame chased them into writhing smoke. The Night's King staggered, cloak ablaze, yet still he raised his sword of twisted crystal. Jon felt time stretched out. He saw Daenerys' gaze lock upon him, with shock, with something like betrayal. He saw Asha's blade flash, severing a white that lunged for Drogon's wing. He saw the Night's King take one step closer, raising that blade toward living flame. Jon met its point with Longclaw, iron-kissed ice, and the ridge rang like struck bell metal. From the impact bloomed cracks down the Night's King's arm, fissures of glowing blue that raced across chest, throat. Bull. He froze mid-breath and shattered into glittering shards no larger than raindrops. A sound like 1,000 distant windows breaking at once rippled across the battlefield, and the ranks of dead collapsed, strings cut. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of water on burning sand. Drogon wheeled overhead, scattering smoke. Jon lowered his sword. The night sky brightened with first hint of dawn, a bruised purple glowing low on the horizon. Daenerys landed her dragon beyond the tide line. She dismounted, boots sinking into slush, cloak of crimson scales trailing. Around her the survivors watched, uncertain whether to lower blades. She strode toward Jon, steam drifting from dragonfire-baked stones. When she spoke, her voice was soft yet sharp. "You did not summon me." "I did," said Jon, voice hoarse. "In every raven I did not send, I summoned you, because I knew you would come." Her gaze flicked to Asha, to the ironborn warriors kneeling at their queen's feet, axes coated in frost-brittle blood. She studied the entwined direwolf and kraken, stitched onto Jon's torn surcoat. Firelight flickered across her eyes, and in them Jon saw grief and wonder, and a hunger for belonging that he recognized too well. Asha stepped forward, scarred hand resting on Jon's arm. "Dragon Queen," she said, words cool as the wind that whistled through kraken-shaped figureheads. "The sea remembers dragonfire, but today it bent its knee." "Mememice." Daenerys met the Iron Queen's gaze. Lightning crackled somewhere high beyond sight. Slowly, she inclined her head. A fraction only, yet it was enough to draw a breath from every throat. Jon closed his eyes, feeling the seas spray like rain upon his lashes. He heard the creak of longship masts, the distant ripple of banners, the sigh of a world tilting. In that breath, the future opened, wide and wild as the ocean. Fleets of kraken-proud warships escorting grain down the Mander. Northern riders guiding free folk across thawing plains. Black dragon wings casting shade over new green fields. The vision shimmered like water mirage, fragile perhaps yet possible. Beside him, Asha's fingers tightened. "Come, husband," she whispered. "Let us greet the dawn." And together, wolf, kraken, and dragon glaring down from the paling sky, they stepped into first light, leaving only dying embers and melted frost to mark the night behind them. I. Snow drifted through the broken arches of Winterfell's first keep, silvering the blackened stones where wildfire had once licked the masonry green. Dawn's pale rose had barely touched the eastern sky when Jon Snow emerged from the tower stair, Longclaw belted at his hip, breath plum pale in the raw air. He paused under the shattered parapet, listening to the hush after storm. A hush of muffled footfalls, of ravens shifting on frost-brittle branches, of horses in distant stables stamping for feed. Below, in the courtyard, Ironborn and Northerners worked side by side, their exhales steaming like the flues of 1,000 forges. Asha Greyjoy had roused her crews well before light. Kraken-sigilled sailcloths lay spread across the ice-slick flagstones as makeshift tents, and gutted mackerel gleamed on spits above iron braseros. Northerners muttered at the tang of fish oil that hung in the air, but they mounted no complaint while the Ironborn drilled. Axes hissing through housed straw dummies, round shields booming beneath practice spears. Every now and then a jest cracked the chill. The bark of a widow's watch bowman at a pike reeve's sloppy stance, or the salty bite of an iron woman mocking a glover for the gloves that bore his name. Yet in the cup of that insult, there was strange camaraderie, growing like winter heather where no flower should live. Jon watched until his shoulders stilled. The wound in his chest, not the scar Ollie had left, but the deeper one the world kept widening, eased a hair's breadth when he saw men and women from houses that had bled each other since the Reavers' War laughed together in the cold. Asha must have felt his gaze, for she turned from the butts, sweat steaming from her temples, and lifted a gloved fist in salute. He answered with a nod and descended the stair. They met by the well, beside a rim of ice-rimmed buckets. Asha's grin flashed white. "You look like a crow who's mislaid his rookery." "I was thinking how strange peace feels," Jon said, "like a shirt borrowed from a taller man." "Give it time," she answered. "Soon enough you'll stretch the cloth or tear the seams. Peace never fits long on Ironborn shoulders either." "Then shall." She tossed him a waterskin that reeked of salt and whiskey. He swallowed a mouthful that burned the frost from his gums. When he handed it back, their fingers brushed, and something in her smile softened. Not coy, but warm as firelight on a storm deck. She wiped her brow with her sleeve. "Black wind sails at midday for White Harbor. I'll escort the first grain convoys south. Manderley hears whispers, Daenerys gathers her unsullied to march. If the queen means to lend us her spears, I'll put our bread in their bellies before the snows drown the roads. Ban. Jon's jaw tightened. He had stood 2 nights before with Daenerys on the battlements. Drogon perched like living knight on the outer wall. Between them stretched words half-spoken, of trust fractured at King's Landing, of fire and bells and children's bones. She had asked, not begged, that he ride with her to rally the realm, that they might erase the ashes with victory against the dead. He had answered that his place was here, in the north, beside his wife. It was the first time he had named Asha so in her presence, and the queen's violet eyes had shuddered like castle gates against siege. If Manderley's larders open, the fleet will keep his harbor free of whites, Jon said. But send ravens by every mast. The night's king is dust. Yet ice still walks. Asha spat into the snow. A new thing that won't drown. The drowned god will hate that. They shared a rueful breath. Then Theon limped toward them. Lean as driftwood, cheeks hollow, sable cloak fraying at the hem. He carried a roll of vellum, inked with maps of coastline from the rills to Bear Island. The last scouts returned, he said, unrolling the parchment across a barrel's lid. Ice packs float as far south as Widow's Watch, but the narrows near Skagos remain open. We can slip 3 squadrons behind the Serpent's Back if the winter wind holds. And if it does not? Asked Jon. Theon shrugged, shoulders hitching like tangled rigging. Then we learn to sail through mountains of glass. I have seen worse odds. Jon traced the inked line skirting cliffs and fjords. Beside the quill marks, small runic notations showed timings, signal fires, fallback coves. They were Asha's hand, angular as dock cleats, precise as a knife's edge. He felt an irrational pride stir, as though he had forged those letters himself. Asha commands, he said. But leave sign for me at the Dreadfort. If your fleet must retreat inland, the Weirwood sconce at the east ward will burn green. Theon's brows lifted. Rob's old beacon trick? I thought that secret died with him. Some secrets know how to live. Jon murmured. We Starks have long memories. Asha clapped the parchment shut. Then let the Kraken wear a wolf's memory. We sail. They parted beneath a sky that thickened with heavy gray. Asha to her longships, Jon toward the new audience chamber raised in the great hall's ruins. There, Sansa waited in a cloak of rich navy wool, hair braided with beads of jet that winked like black ice. Maester Walken hovered beside her, parchment rolled. 2 figures flanked the room's hearth, Davos Seaworth and Tyrion Lannister, their voices low like men wagering with ghosts. When Jon entered, the group fell silent, save the pop of pine inside the brazier. Davos inclined his head. Your Grace. The old smuggler had been calling him that since Hardhome, though the word still felt ill-fitting as a stranger's boots. Sansa lifted a quill. Her quill, direwolf carved from heart-tree wood, and poised over parchment. We tally the dead, the grain, the dragonglass. We speak of the realm. Sit, brother. Jon sat. Tyrion leaned on his cane. The injury from King's Landing's fall left his gait crooked, and flicked ash from his sleeve. Good morrow, King Consort of the Salt Throne, the imp said. I trust married life agrees with you. You look less haunted, though perhaps only by half a ghost. Half a ghost is progress, Jon replied. Davos suppressed a smile. Sansa dipped her quill. Reports from White Harbor, she began, tapping the scroll. Lord Wyman pledges not only grain but shipwrights. In return, he asks for Ironborn to teach Harbor Watch proper boarding maneuvers. Defensive only, he insists, to reassure the small folk. Asha agrees. Jon nodded. Teach them to repel raiders, and my wife will lose half her kin's reputation. But she agrees. Tyrion laced 2 fingers. And what of the Queen's army? Daenerys camps along the King's roads, frost-cracked stones, unsullied tents flapping like so many doomed sails. Rumor says her blood riders roll dice to see whose sons will be named warlord of the northern wastes, when all is said. That rumor is Cersei's ghost whispering in smallfolk ears, Davos said, tone flat. The Dragon Queen's riders talk of glory. but they obey her leash. And a leash grows frayed when its owner is tugged between lovers and kingdoms, Tyrion replied, pale eyes steady on Jon. She may forgive your new alliance, Snow, yet the realm sees jilted queens as they see wildfires, unpredictable, ruinous, and bright. Jon met the dwarf's gaze without blinking. She is not jilted. She chose her path. I chose mine. We share a war, nothing more? Tyrion's smile curved like a half-drawn bow. Wars have forged marriages before. We drink to the irony. Mensawand. Sansa placed her quill down, eyes cool blue. Brother, you must speak with her before the fleet sails. If we march in two minds, the dead will find the space between our doubts. Jon's jaw ached. He rose. Then I will go to her tent at dusk. Davos stepped forward. Go with words ready, lad. She carries a fire inside that burns hotter than dragon flame. It has warmed great halls, and melted them too. Daenerys' pavilion stood on the inner bailey, red silk rippling like the inside of a blood-bright shell. Outside, unsullied, stood Sentinel, still as carved obsidian, spear tips silvered by hoarfrost. They parted without word. For Jon. Inside, heat struck him full. Braziers blazed with coals black as demon hearts, and shadowy shapes of foreign tapestries crawled across the canvas walls like living things. She sat at a low table strewn with maps, wine-dark hair cascading loose. When she looked up, purple irises gleamed like candle flame behind amethyst glass. Lord Snow, she said, voice steady. Or should I say, King on the Salt. I am Lord of Winterfell and sworn to the north. Jon answered. The title beyond that is for others to dress me in. She gestured at cushions. He remained standing. Reports reach me that your wife sails today. I am yet to meet the Iron Queen. You know Asha, Jon said quietly. You fought together at Meereen's walls, though she served her uncle then. Daenerys traced a finger along the coastline of the drawn map. Didi. Her daggers were sharp. So is her ambition. And yours? Sharper. Her smile cut. Jon, have I wronged you so deeply you raise fleets behind my back? He took a breath deep enough to frost his lungs. I raise fleets in front of you now. We march the same road, Daenerys. But the north bleeds under winter. We must feed it. Ironborn ships can haul grain where carts cannot roll. What of my dragons, she asked. They can warm roads, melt ice from river fords. They can also frighten the small folk half to madness, Jon said. Your dragons are weapons. Use them as swords, not shovels. Her knuckles whitened on the map. Dadi. You speak like one who has felt their bite. I have, he whispered. And so have the innocents at King's Landing. They look to me now and see my failure in your fire. That is my burden, and yours. Meming panned. Silence pulsed like a wounded vein. She looked past him, through the tent flap, where the tip of the broken first keep speared the dusk. Could you ever forgive me? She asked so soft it might have been snow falling. Jon stared at her hands. The small scars at each knuckle from childhood training, the half-moon crescent where Dragonscale once sliced her palm. He thought of the night in the crypts when he told her of his birth. How she had reached for him like a drowning woman clutching driftwood. He thought of the bells and the flames and the roar of Drogon's rage. Forgiveness is for gods, he said at last. We mortals make do with tomorrow. Her shoulders fell. A breath left her lips as if she had exhaled a life. She reached for a wine cup, sipped, then set it down unsatisfied. Tomorrow then, she said. Ride with me when the snow melts. We will march on the Dreadfort, break the last of the white nests. Let the world see North and Dragon side by side. If the snow melts, Jon corrected. And if the whites wait. She laughed, bleak and short. They always wait. Death has patience. Then? He could find no answer. So he bowed and left. That night, a hush blanketed Winterfell thick as old wool. Torchlight flicked behind narrow arrow slits, and men huddled around cookfires trading legends of knights, queens, and ice spiders, big as hounds. In the new lord's chambers, a room of oak beams still smelling of fresh sawdust. Jon stripped off jerkin and boots, weary in bone and mind. Asha lay on the bed wrapped in wolf fur, hair damp from seawater spray, cutlass propped by the pillow like a lover's arm. "You smell of dragon smoke." Eyes half-lidded. "And you of tarred rope," he said, smiling despite himself. She patted the mattress. "Come, husband, let the sea wash the soot away." He sank beside her, and for a while there were no words, only the hush of wind beyond shutters and the slower hush of breath between them. Later, when moonlight carved silver runes across the planks, Asha spoke. "I may be gone 7 weeks if the ice holds. If the ice breaks, longer. Send ravens. Ravens drown." He brushed loose hairs from her brow. "Then send memories. I'll read them in the waves." She laughed. Soft. Her hand traced the scar beneath his ribs. "Our first child should be born in salt or snow?" She asked lightly, too lightly. Jon's heart stumbled. Is that question or prophecy? Both. Her eyes shone. "Maester Walken gave me herbs to test. The moon's blood is late, and I feel the sea heave inside me." A hush filled the room, deeper than any before. Jon laid a hand atop hers on her flat belly. He imagined a pulse there, tiny as a bird's wing beneath ice. "We will raise her between salt and snow." He whispered, sure somehow it was a daughter. "And teach her to fear neither storm nor winter. And teach her to gut a man by 9. Asha added, closing her eyes. 7, Jon said, and was startled to hear laughter in his own voice. Sleep came like the tide. Dawn broke raw and red when the fleet departed. From Winterfell's east wall, Jon watched the gray sails vanish beyond the last twist of the white knife. Banners snapping with embroidered wolves entwined in kraken coils. The wind carried the distant beat of drums, the ironborn cadence that marked war or exodus. Snow spiraled around him, yet for the first time in days he felt no chill. Perhaps because a part of his heart sailed with those ships, chasing horizons he could not follow. Behind him, boots scraped. Tyrion leaned beside a merlin, clutching a fur-lined cloak tight. "She leaves with half your hosts," the dwarf observed. "And all your heart." "She leaves with hope," Jon answered. "Hope sails faster than men." Tyrion blew into his hands. "Hope is also lighter. It drifts away when storms come." Jon said nothing. Tyrion's eyes softened. "Forgive my barbs. I learned long ago a jester jests hardest at weddings." He nodded toward the invisible fleet. "For what it's worth, I believe in her. And in you. One day you may both believe in yourselves." Jon turned back to the river. Far off, a lone gull arrowed across gray sky, crying like a lost child. Winterfell's inner bailey became a forge of industry in the days that followed. Davos oversaw dragonglass shipments from Dragonstone. Black spearheads stacked like hornet stingers, arrow points glimmering purple-blue. Northern masons reinforced the outer wall with quarried basalt. Unsullied formed training rings with spear and shield, while free-folk archers loosed flights at distant hay bales. Sansa coordinated every scrap of cloth, every pound of oats, her ledgers filling faster than ravens could carry copies. On the 7th day, after the fleet's departure, a messenger staggered through the hunter's gate, half dead from cold. He bore a scrap of sail, dyed kraken black, ink scrawled in Asha's hand. Ice floes shattered at seal pelt's sound. Black wind grounded but floats, turning south to Last Hearth for shelter. White sighted on the tumbled stones of the last river. Fleet intact. Grain safe. Jon read the note thrice, memorizing every blot. He penned reply swift. "Ride hard for the Dreadfort beacon if pressed. The North's fire waits." He sent the raven, yet unease gnawed his gut like a starving wolf. That night Bran summoned him. The boy, or man, sat in the high solar from which ravens once nested. Eyes clouded with knowledge wider than sky. "The trees whisper," Bran said, voice distant as wind across moor. "They feel chill beyond old winter. Something stirs beneath the shivering sea, a cold older than men. Jon's blood chilled. The night's king is dead. Cold is a crown, brother. Bran turned those pale eyes on him. If one king falls, the north wind chooses another brow. Power fills void as water fills cracks. Another. Jon's voice failed. Not a man this time, Bran breathed. Not a king. A queen. Under the sea, where drowned men dream. Men? The words struck like stones down a well. Images flared behind Jon's eyes. The gray woman of ironborn lullabies, hair of writhing kelp, skin white as drowned bone. The drowned god's bride, some called her, or the storm harpy. He remembered Asha's jest. The sea would drink the gods dry. What must we do? Jon asked. Wake the world, Bran whispered. Wake dragons, krakens, wolves, all. Or winter wakes them first. A fortnight later, ravens brought darker tidings. Long ships of Black Tide Squadron had vanished near the lonely light. Last beacon on the edge of the world. Asha's flagship limped into last hearth. Hull scarred with deep gouges that smelled of brine and rot. The sailors spoke of shadows moving beneath the ice pack, of tentacles pale and vast brushing their keels, of eyes like blue lanterns blinking up through cracks in the floes. Jon convened council that night. Daenerys stood in scaled armor, openly angry. Drogon roosting beyond the wall, scattering coals from his nostrils. Tyrion, Davos Theon, returned with his sister's wounded vessel. And even Lyanna Mormont joined, fierce in a bearskin that dwarfed her. Bran sat silent beside the hearth, a raven on each shoulder. They speak of a sea wight, Davos said, rubbing his beard. Some monstrous beast raised by whatever sorcery animated the dead. Dead do not swim, Lyanna snapped. They do if bound to what is drowned, Theon countered, voice trembling despite iron poise. I felt it, beneath the keel, cold that ate the nails from my boots. Daenerys planted gauntleted hands on the table. Asha must abandon the northern sea lanes till we know the threat. My dragons will scour the coast. Flame cannot burn below water, Jon reminded. Steam may, she shot back. If I boil the bay, the beast will float, belly up. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. 1,000 fishermen might boil with it, and your dragons tire in this cold. Every flight taxes them double. Jon laid a hand on the map. We lure it instead, away from shipping lanes. A kraken hunts what bleeds. We give it a wound. Theon blinked. A ship of corpses, it would follow. Sansa flinched. We have few corpses to spare. We burn ours lest they rise. Not corpses, Jon said slowly. Fire, taut. All eyes turned. He spoke the plan in low cadence. A decoy tanker filled with whale oil, dragged behind black wind into open water. Glass jars of oil buoyed beneath buoys. Nets woven with dragon glass shards. When the beast rose to strike, Drogon would ignite the slick foam. The trap would burn above and below. A ring of liquid flame sealing the creature in a fiery noose. Dragon glass netting might disrupt the wight's binding magic. Flame might melt the evil from its heart. Silence thickened. Then Daenerys nodded once. I will fly. Drogon hunts tonight. Thus they prepared. Ironborn rigged the tanker. Northern smiths forged glass hooks. Maester Walken brewed wildfire derivatives to thicken the oil. Bran warged ravens that scouted the ice edge, seeking the blue glow of impossible eyes. And Jon, sleepless, stood watch each dawn, yearning for the sight of Asha's dark sails returning. 3 nights later, the fleet set forth. Black wind leading, tanker groaning behind like a cow to slaughter. Moon hung low, fat as a drowned sailor's gut. Frost buckled the rigging lines in tiny pops. Theon's knuckles whitened on the helm while Asha stalked the deck in silence, spyglass sweeping waves. Jon rode with them, could not stay behind. Though the weight of Winterfell's crown dragged at his shoulders, he stood near prow, long claws sheathed, eyes on blank sea. Somewhere above, Dragon wings beat. A rumble like distant storm. Hours bled. Then the sea shuddered. A shape surfaced. First a ridge of pale flesh, then another, impossibly long. Water sheeted off barnacle-scaled hide. Tentacles uncoiled, not 8 like a mortal kraken but innumerable, each suckered limb crusted with frost crystals. Amid the writhing mass reared a head like a squid's fused to a woman's torso, hair of streaming kelp, face smooth and eyeless save 2 hollow pits burning ice blue. Sailors screamed. Asha shouted orders. The tanker's tow line released. It drifted dead toward the horror. Jon felt the cold from it, a cold that froze tears in his eyes before they could fall. Drogon plunged, fire licking his maw, but the beast's limbs flung skyward, slapping the dragon aside with a boom like mountains colliding. Drogon screeched, wing torn, spiraled. Daenerys clung, guiding him from the crash. "Light it," Jon roared. Archers released flaming arrows. They danced along whale oil slick that pooled across the waves, yet the cold extinguished flame on contact. The trap failed. The sea white lunged for black wind, tentacles clamping rail. Wood buckled. Sailors hacked, dragonglass blades shattering suckers into shards of ice flesh that crawled even severed. One limb swept Jon across deck. Pain burst in his ribs. He rose coughing blood as the creature's head loomed close, mouth a ring of fangs dripping brine and shadow. Asha seized a shattered spar, jammed a dragonglass spearhead to its tip. For salt and snow, she bellowed, and drove it through the beast's maw. A scream like glaciers calving ripped the night. Blue light crackled along every tentacle. The beast recoiled, thrashing. Jon, staggering, saw the tanker bob. Hull cracked but oil still within. He met Theon's eyes. Wordless accord. Theon cut rigging. Jon and 2 sailors heaved the tanker's tiller until the smashed hulk veered across beast-writhing water. Drogon, wounded, circled low. Daenerys shouting Valyrian. Jon braced at prow, torch in hand. "When I jumped, turn her aside," he shouted to Asha. "Mad wolf," she cried. "Trust me." He leapt. He hit tanker deck, legs buckling. Oil fumes clung to nostrils. Beast's limbs already coiled round the hulk. Jon shoved torch tip into oozing seam. Flame took, green and black. The oil roared alive, a wall of spiteful light. Heat seared hair. Flesh. He ran to rail and jumped as explosion blossomed behind. Propelled by shockwave toward frigid sea. Water swallowed him in firelit night. Icy knives stabbed lungs. Through blurred lash of pain he rose, gasping, as black wind's beam swung low. Arms hauled him aboard. Asha and Theon, faces ash-suited, fury and fear wrestling. Behind, the tanker became a volcano. Oil fire spilling, nets of dragonglass swirling in molten eddies. The sea white thrashed within ring of flame that would not die. Limbs boiling to vapor, blue eyes dimming like stars at dawn. At last, with a wail that shook every hull, it sank beneath smoking flood, leaving only trails of black ice that melted in seconds. Drogon landed on black wind, one wing trailing blood. Daenerys slid down his shoulder, knees buckling. Jon reached her side. They grasped wrists in warrior's grip, foreheads touching. "It is done," she breathed. Half sob, half laugh. "Not yet," Jon rasped. But tomorrow gained another heartbeat. Asha raised her cutlass, blood and oil dripping. Sailors cheered. Northmen answered. On every deck, torches lifted. Light danced across waves where dawn's first pale bar crept. They returned to Winterfell corpses, tired, bearing wounded and casks of salted hope. Drogon limped to roost on a rebuilt tower, unsullied tended his torn membrane. Maesters stitched sailors, brewed warmth. In the great hall, fires blazed higher than memory, and Sansa presided over a feast, not of victory but survival. Salted cod and onion, apples and honey wine, black bread slathered with dripping. No songs rose, only quiet talk, heads bowed as though listening to the slow beat of fate. Jon stood with Daenerys at Hall's End, the direwolf banner flanking the red-gold three-headed dragon. He spoke few words, praise for courage, grief for dead, promise of spring yet distant. Daenerys added none, merely laid a hand over his on the dais rail, and let silence serve as oath. After guests drifted to bed, Jon found Bran under the heart tree. Snow fell thick. The boy's eyes glowed moon-white, ravens perched like ornaments around the red leaves. "You saw?" Jon asked. "I felt the Sea Queen die," Bran whispered. "Cold recoils for now." "For now," Jon echoed. "The pattern holds." Bran's gaze pierced night. Ice rises, fire answers. Between them, men bleed. One day the wheel stops, if spokes break. "How?" Bran closed his eyes. "You will break them, wolves and krakens and dragons. But not with swords." Jon waited. Bran opened his eyes again, distant, achingly old. "With a child," the seer said. "A child of salt and snow and fire." Jon's breath caught. He thought of Asha's palm on her belly, of the tiny spark unborn. "Girl or boy?" he whispered. "Both," Bran answered. "One soul, two storms. Remember." "Da." Jon's knees weakened, but he stayed upright. Snow melted on his lashes. A cry echoed across courtyard. The cry of a child? No, only a raven's croak. Yet, in its cadence, Jon heard tomorrow. He touched the heart tree's weeping face, felt sap blood sticky beneath glove. Around him the world slept, yet not still. Roots drank, branches shivered, and beyond the walls, the dark waited, nursing new crowns of frost. But within Winterfell burned three fires strong, the direwolves, the krakens, and the dragons. And where flames met, winter found no purchase. Jon Snow turned from the godswood and walked toward that trisected blaze, Longclaw's wolf-head pommel glinting under moon-washed snow. A promise forged in salt and tempered in winter's heart. Tomorrow he would plan, would march, would bleed anew. Tonight he walked, step after step, carrying the weight of unborn worlds balanced on the edge of his shadow. And the night watched, and whispered, and waited, as the first true dawn of a bridged realm cracked gold across the farthest horizon. Ah, Kai. Eh. The frost came down like sifted bone dust, drifting over the courtyard where the iron cauldrons blazed, and the night's last watch beat their spears for warmth. Jon Snow stood alone beneath the shadow of Winterfell's new east tower, his cloak floating on a wind that smelled of ember and distant pine, and watched the stars pale one by one. An hour yet till dawn, he judged. Long enough to hold counsel with himself, short enough that the day would still surprise him. He had dreamt again of waves breaking on black stone. The roar rose, then died, leaving a silence in which a child laughed, soft, bright, and terrible in its promise. He woke before he saw whose arms cradled the babe. His hand drifted to the wolf-head pommel of Longclaw, as if the steel might answer riddles the gods would not. Behind him boots whispered. Davos Seaworth stopped at a respectful distance, gloves tucked beneath his belt. "Couldn't sleep, my lord." "Didn't try," Jon answered. Davos tilted his head, moon-scarred cheekbone catching torch glow. "Asha's raven came at midnight. Black wind has beached at last hearth to refit. Ice took her rudder, but the grain's safe. Maester says they'll march the rest by sled." "Now? By sled from last hearth?" Jon frowned. "That's a fortnight through drifts deeper than a man's chest." "Ay. But the Ironborn have strong backs and thicker pride." Davos paused. She writes the babe kicks like a cat o' nine tails." Something like heat rose beneath Jon's ribs, warring with sharper worry. He folded arms. "Tell Wolken. Riders ready with fresh horses each hold fast. She'll need them if her time comes on the road." "Nan?" "I'll see it done." Davos hesitated. "The Queen meets with the Karstark envoys come sunrise. Her Grace thought you might add weight." Jon exhaled white. "I'll stand beside her." The old knight's eyes softened. "The dragon and the wolf? And the kraken too." Never thought to see such heraldry share one hall. Nor I. Yet here we are. Jon turned, scanning the quiet ramparts. Davos. When you sailed the Blackwater, did you ever fear the tide more than the enemy? Davos eyed the snow swirling over the parapet. Tide turns on her own counsel. But you learn to let her bear the ship. Fight the wrong current, she drowns you. Then? Jon nodded slowly. Then we ride the tide. When Davos departed, Jon lingered until the first smear of rose cut the sky. Dawn's faint warmth reached him not at all. At length he descended the tower stairs and crossed the yard toward the great hall, where lamplight burned behind shuttered windows. The air inside hummed with muted voices, the shuffle of parchment, the clink of cups, the machinery of fragile alliance. Sansa stood at the high table, flanked by Lyanna Mormont, child fierce as a short sword, and Lord Serwyn rubbing frost from his beard. Near the hearth, Grey Worm drilled a knot of Karstark men on unsullied shield formations, his expression stone calm. At the center, Daenerys bent over the long oak map table, Tyrion at her side. Dragons and direwolves carved of jet and bone marked positions along the King's Road. Her silver thread cloak brushed the floor like a comet's tail. She lifted her gaze as Jon approached, candles flickering purple in her eyes. Lord Karstark offers 200 riders, but only if his hillsmen keep their old gods. She spoke quietly, yet her voice carried. He fears the dragon's fire. We are not burning gods, Jon said, resting gloved hands on the table's edge. We fight ice. Rickard Karstark, gaunt, stoop-shouldered like a lamppost war-battered, inclined his shaggy head. Yet watchtowers swear your queen torched men in chains across the sea. Hard tales travel far. Daenerys straightened. I broke chains, my lord. I burned slavers, not slaves. Tyrion tapped a finger on the map, rings clinking. And should any slaver crawl north of the neck, I dare say he might feel similar warmth. Sansa's quill scratched. The Karstarks have held the drowned godswood since the long night. Let them keep their trees and their fears. We need riders, not prayers. Jon met Rickard's eyes, winter pale, wary. Your sons died at the Green Fork, aided by my brother Robb. I ask no faith from their father, only the blades they left unwielded. The old lord's throat worked. At last he set one calloused fist beside the direwolf token. The blades are yours. But know this, Targaryen. If Dragonflame scorches Karhold's soil, every hearth in the woods will remember. Them? Daenerys inclined her head, neither proud nor humbled. Then let us light no hearths with Dragonflame. Only with victory. The pact sealed, the room exhaled as though a stone had slid from its chest. Sansa drafted orders. Lyanna barked at scribes. Grey Worm dismissed his demonstration. Jon felt the machinery lurch forward one more rattling turn. Later, he found Daenerys by the stables, stroking Drogon's wounded wing where canvas splints braced rent membrane. Steam drifted from the dragon's nostrils, melting snow to hiss on trampled straw. He will fly again soon, she said without turning. The healers say another fortnight. Jon laid a palm on the rough obsidian warm scales. And you? How long till the Karstark pact weighs heavier than you care to carry? She breathed a laugh like cracked slate. I have carried heavier. My father's name, for one. The world sees fire in me even when I offer water. Water freezes in winter, Jon murmured. At that, she met his eyes. And fire burns beyond reason. I remember your words. Damdo. He shifted, uneasy at the memory of ash raining on bells. Words repay neither of us. Only deeds. She traced a fingertip along Drogon's wing edge. When Asha returns, bring her to me. 3 banners may fly at Winterfell, but the realm counts them 1 or 3 as it pleases. Let them see us break bread. Jon nodded. She will come. The babe grows. A flicker. Grief. Longing. Crossed the queen's face, gone in a blink. A child of wolf and kraken. The realm will whisper. Let them. Jon forced a thin smile. Winterfell has thick walls. She studied him a heartbeat longer, then kissed her dragon's neck, and left without another word. Night brought a storm that swallowed moon and tower alike. Snow thrashed windows like thrown sand. Fires roared. In chambers beneath the rookery, Bran Stark sat before a bowl of weirwood paste. Eyes rolled white, ravens fluttering restlessly overhead. Jon entered with candle in hand. The flame guttered at the unearthly chill. The three-eyed raven, for Jon could no longer think of him as brother, spoke without turning. The ice roads crack south of Moat Cailin. Spirits, older than the first men, stir in the barrows. Winter does not sleep. Mending. Jon set the candle on a stool, heart hammering. The sea white is dead. We broke its binding. One branch cut, Bran replied. Roots remain. His voice sounded like wind funneled through crypt fields. Listen. Jon strained, heard only fire pop, ravens rustle, until the hush bent into whisper, faint, distant, like bones chafing. Words formed in none tongue, yet meaning seeped. The cold has a mother. The sea has a heart. The drowned remember. He swallowed. Can it be stopped? In time, Bran said. But time bends thin. You must ride to the Barrowlands. Wake the kings of stone. The Barrow Knights are legend. So were direwolves that rode men, Bran said, turning. His pupils returned, wide, dark. So were dragons. Jon's throat tightened. If I leave Winterfell, Daenerys will guard it. Trust her fire. Bran's gaze flicked to the dark beyond the arrow slit. And trust the Kraken woman. Her blood remembers the deep. She will see what swims yet. Jon exhaled hard. When do we ride? On the morrow's dusk. The dead travel by dusk. We must greet them first. Now. Jon nodded, touched Bran's shoulder, felt skin cold as snowmelt, and left before his own courage chilled. Day broke swollen with gray light. Jon mustered a small column, Tormund and 50 free folk spear throwers, Davos with a dozen knighted Riverlanders, Lyanna Mormont, who refused any left behind when House Mormont bled. Grey Worm offered unsullied, but Jon declined. They were needed to guard Winterfell and Drogon. Daenerys accepted this with tight-lipped understanding. Sansa clasped Bjorn's arm in the yard. Bring them all home, brother. I will, he lied softly. She pressed a small carved wolf into his palm. Smooth pine, painted red eyes. For luck. He tucked it into his cloak. The gates groaned open. Snow scoured the world white. They rode south into the storm. The King's Road lay buried beneath drifts. Still, the shaggy northern mounts plowed onward. Wind howled through leafless birch, like the moan of distant horns. By dusk they reached the ruined towers of Torrhen's Square, where Karstark outriders waited with news. White packs sighted near the shivering shore, driving elk before them like herds. Jon dispatched scouts and pressed on. On the third night, the storm relented, unveiling a moon raw and red. They camped on a rise over the Barrowlands, rolling heath studded by mounds like frozen waves. Fires burned low, muffled by earthworks to hide their glow. Jon could not sleep. He walked beyond the wardstones, stood amid brittle heather, and listened. Nothing. Then, footfalls. Tormund lumbered up, beard rimed with frost. Snow, you keep colder company than I like. Jon half smiled. Did the dead whisper jokes in their patches? They whispered your name from Hardhome to the Gift. The wildling shrugged massive shoulders. We kill them again, we drink. We'll drink, Jon agreed, though the promise felt hollow. When Tormund trudged back, Jon closed eyes and felt the earth breathe. A pulse thrummed beneath the heath. Slow as glaciers, the barrows dreamed. He knelt, placed Bran's pine wolf on the ground. Wind stirred. In the hush, a voice older than King's grave sighed. Blood of wolf, blood of wave. Speak the name of sorrow. Jon's lips parted. Nyssa. No. Wrong age, wrong myth. He tried again. Lyanna. The wind stilled. He swallowed. Rhaegar. Stillness. He clenched fists. At last he whispered, "Jon Snow." The pulse quickened. Once, then faded. He waited, lungs aching. Nothing. He retrieved the wooden wolf, heart heavier than mail, and returned to camp. Before dawn, alarms rang. From the mists rolled figures. Armored shapes wrought of flickering frost. Eyes sunken black tunnels. Arrow knights. Free folk raised spears, riverlanders knocked arrows. But the dead did not charge. They halted a stone's throw away and knelt. Spears held half down like banners at funeral. Jon pushed through ranks, long claw drawn. Frost Knight helms mirrored moonlight. Within visor darkness nothing moved. Torment spat. "What trick is this?" Jon stepped forward. The foremost knight lowered head. Ice-rimed mail rattled. Slowly it unslung a horn carved from mammoth tusk, inscribed with runes crusted in hoarfrost. With frozen gauntlet, it offered the horn. Jon sheathed sword, reached. Cold, bit through glove like broken glass. The horn felt alive, throbbing faintly. He lifted it. The knights rose, turned, and marched back into fog. Snow swallowed them silent. Davos murmured, "Seven save us." The dead deliver gifts now. Jon raised the horn to pale sky. No sound came, yet wind shifted, sighing through rune carvings. He pierced a fingertip on tooth-sharp rim. A single drop of blood beaded crimson. The horn vibrated, drank the drop, fell still. Bran's words echoed, "Wake the kings of stone." Perhaps the horn was key, or challenge. Jon bounded in cloth. That day they crossed heath toward the largest barrow, a hill broad as Winterfell's yard. At its crown, a stone arch slumped, gate to the tomb of the first kings. Ravens perched along lintel. Silent judges. Jon planted torch in frozen turf. "We go in pairs. Leave half to hold the rise." Lyanna Mormont strode to his side. "I go first." Davos lifted brows. "Lady, you're half my weight." "Twice your heart," he snapped, and Jon pressed no further. The passage sloped down into shadow thick with dust of centuries. Their torches revealed walls carved with tongues, no maester living red. Sigils of stag, bear, direwolf interlocked around a central spiral. The symbol old Nan called the first dawn. At a chamber where roots coiled like petrified serpents, they halted. There, upon a dais of fused glassy stone, lay 12 swords, bronze, flanged, edges dulled by age yet untarnished. Before them sprawled a skeleton in mail of blackened gold, crown of dog teeth set about brow. The skull's eye sockets burned faint blue. Lyanna crossed herself. "The Barrow King." Jon unwrapped the horn, set it on the dais. Stone groaned. The skeleton's jaw dropped, soundless. The 12 bronze swords quivered. Jon looked to Lyanna. "If this wakes a nightmare, I'll stab its heart," she answered, steel steady. He lifted the horn to lips. Breath misted. He blew. Soundless. Yet he felt vibrations surge through bone, torch flame gutter, roots tremor. Outside muffled cries rose. The bronze swords leapt. Hovered. Then clattered upright, like soldiers snapping to attention around their ancient lord. The skull's eyes flared bright, then dimmed to soft gray. Slowly, the Barrow King sat, bones creaking. He regarded Jon, or seemed to, then laid a bony hand on one bronze blade and offered it hilt first. Jon accepted. Cold, but not corpse cold, rather the chill of deep water. Runes glimmered along fuller. Breath of dawn, sword of promise. The Barrow King's jaw moved. A rasp slithered up the passage. Words in first tongue Bran once taught Jon in snatches. Storm returns, branches break bind the wound. Jon bowed low. "We will." The king laid back, jaw shutting. Light faded from sockets. The swords toppled inert. Lyanna exhaled. "We take them?" "No, Dot. One gift is enough." Jean shouldered the bronze blade. They climbed out. Outside, the barrow knights stood ringed around camp, shields grounded. They parted to let John pass. Tormund's jaw hung open. As John emerged, the knights knelt once more, then melted into mist, leaving only frost prints that steamed and vanished. Davos crossed himself. Gods old and new. John hefted the blade. We ride home. Days blurred. Wind lashed flurries across swales. Once they fought stray wights at a frozen ford, and the bronze blade cleft dead flesh with a hiss like sun on snow, leaving ripples of pale light. Word spread among the column. Some whispered Dawnsword, some Icebane. John kept it wrapped. When Winterfell's towers rose through swirling gray, horns welcomed them. At the gate Sansa, Bran, Grey Worm waited, and Daenerys with cloak winging behind. John dismounted stiff-legged and laid the blade at Bran's feet. The boy's eyes misted. Raven feathers trembled. "It is begun," Bran murmured. Before John could ask, a shout rang from ramparts. Riders approached from the river road, ironborn banners tangled with direwolf and dragon. Black Wind survivors led sledges heavy with grain and crates swaddled in furs. At their fore rode Asha, cheeks wind-burned, a hand pressed to her belly. She reined in, eyes finding John across churned mud. He crossed the yard in long strides. She slid from saddle, her knees buckled, but he caught her. Close. He felt the tight curve beneath layers of wool and leather. "Told you I'd ride harder than the snows," she rasped, voice ragged but triumphant. He kissed her brow, salt on his lips. "Welcome home, my queen." Around them the yard buzzed, men cheering, wolves barking, dragons roaring from tower ledge. Yet John heard only the thunder of life in his wife's heart. Daenerys strode near, cloak tossing. Asha stiffened, hand drifting to dagger hilt. The queen halted an arm's reach away, then extended gloved hand. "Salt feeds flame," she said. "Flame warms salt. Let us eat together." Asha eyed the hand, then clasped it. "You pour the wine." Daenerys' smile held edge and warmth both. "We have Dornish red, enough to melt ice between queens." "Oh." John exhaled a breath he'd not known he held. That night, feast hammered hall and heart alike. Banners of wolf, kraken, and dragon entwined above dais. Harpists played the lay of the last heroes. Drummers thumped kraken cadences. Free folk danced with Karstarks while Unsullied watched bemused. At the high table, John sat between Asha and Daenerys, feeling the realm's fault lines thrum underfoot yet hold. For now, when cups were drained and marrow sucked from bone, Bran summoned hush. He spoke, voice carrying beyond natural lungs, filling rafters with cold wind. "The long night is not ended. The sea mother stirs yet. Deeper, darker. The horn has sounded once. It must sound thrice to bind the wound. First for stone, done. Second for wave. Third for flame. Third for flame." A murmur rippled. Asha's hand tightened on Jon's thigh. Tyrion leaned toward Davos, whispering, "We bathe in riddles while ice gnaws at door." Bran's gaze swept hall. Wave must answer wave. A child of sea salt must carry the horn to the deeps where drowned gods dream. Flame must follow. Dragon fire upon the world vein. "Then?" Daenerys rose, eyes blazing. "Then I fly when the child is born." Silence expectant. Asha pushed to feet, one hand on belly. "If salt must carry the horn, it is mine to bear." John started. "You'll not dive in childbed." She shot him a wicked smile. "I am Kraken, husband. We birth at sea." Bran's ravens croaked assent. John closed eyes. Fate caged him tighter each day. Yet here was a path, narrow, harrowing, but path. He stood, laid a hand atop Asha's. "Then we sail after the babe's first cry. Until then, Winterfell stands guard." Menderanda. Applause broke like distant surf. Hesitant. Swelling. Tyrion raised goblet. "To salt, snow and fire, May they scald our enemies and ourselves not too badly. Cups clanged. Laughter spilled. Uneasy, but real. Jon met Daenerys' eyes over rim. Saw mirrors of fear and hope wed in their depths. Weeks passed in fevered quiet. Snow eased. Roads cleared enough that trade wagons creaked through gates. White Harbor sent silver, fish, cloth, deepwood mock timber, and tar. Maester Walken charted Asha's swelling belly with scholars' awe. Jon split days between training yards and bedchamber, where Asha cursed soft at each new ache yet refused idleness. She drilled sailors in dragonglass harpoon, sparred until sweat soaked the rushes, then curled against Jon at night, and planned voyages no man had sailed. Meanwhile, Bran's influence spread subtle. Root workers from haunted forests arrived, bearing saplings of heart tree. Children of the forest, too small, furtive, slipped through postern gate one fog morn and vanished into crypts. Whisper, said stones beneath Winterfell shifted, ancient hot springs surging like blood. Tension simmered. Lord Tarley, leading Reach refugees, balked at Freefolk Quarter in South Bailey. Grey Worm contained the scuffle, but grudges lingered. Karstark riders skirmished with Sellsword outrunners from Dorne over hunting rights. Sansa's courts worked soon up till moonrise to settle quarrels, her ink-stained fingers shaking come evening. And always beyond the wall's ruin, shapes moved, white scouts testing bog and pass. Reports arrived of villages on the rills found empty, doors ajar, hearths cold. The war slept with one eye open. On the eve of the new moon, Asha's water broke. The hall was mid-council when a breathless maid burst in, shouting. Jon vaulted benches, heart in throat. Maester Walken and 2 midwives already swarmed their chamber. Steam from cauldron fogged pans. Asha half sat on straw-strewn cot, hair plastered, grin feral. Took your damn time, wolf. He seized her hand. I was across the yard. Across 7 hells felt like. Labor raged through the night. Asha cursed every god above and drowned. At the witching hour, a cry split air. Stronger, clearer than Jon's dream. A girl, slick with birth call, black curls already glistening. Asha laughed and sobbed all at once. Jon held the tiny swaddled body, warmth so fierce it scorched fears away. The babe opened eyes pale gray, unblinking. They named her Elana, for the light between sea and snow. At dawn Bran arrived, ravens whispering. He laid slender palm on infant brow. Eyes rolled white. A hush deeper than stone settled. Wave shall bear the horn, Bran intoned. Flame shall follow. And snow? Snow shall choose. The babe gurgled, small fist curling as if grasping phantom thread. Jon felt weight shift inside. Dread and wonder mingled. Asha brushed tears away roughly. Little kraken wolf, she murmured. World want know what bit it. In the yard below, horns suddenly brayed alarm. Jon stiffened. Grey Worm's shout echoed. Riders from the south. He kissed Asha's sweat-damp brow, set Elana in cradle. I go. Bring me ahead if trouble. She growled, exhaustion unable to dull her spirit. Jon buckled sword and strode for rampart. A column approached across whitening fields, unsullied vanguard escorting banners of Lannister crimson, beside Black Stag of Baratheon. At their head rode a lean figure in mail and fur, golden red hair shining. Edric Storm, bastard of Robert. Last Baratheon blood. Tyrion met Jon on the wall, squinting. By the 7, the boy from Storm's End grown taller. Jon wondered what storm followed him. The gates opened. Edric dismounted, bowed stiff. Lord Snow. Queen Daenerys summons a council of thrones. She bids you south to Harrenhal come spring's first thaw. Or sooner. Jon eyed the banners. And these colors? Baratheon, Lannister? Sworn now to the dragon? Edric's jaw tightened. Some lions bend, others bare teeth. The queen would know which. Now, Behind him, riders unfurled a third banner. A white field bearing 3 shapes entwined. Wolf, kraken, dragon, encircled by bronze spiral. New sigil for a new age. Edric offered a sealed scroll. Wax bore the spiral mark. Jon accepted, broke seal, scanned. Daenerys' script flowed sure. She would treat with Jon, Asha, and the babe at Harrenhal. Neutral ground. To sound the horn's second call before rivers melted. Rumors swirled of Euron's remnants rallying in the stepstones, of Reach lords plotting. She sought union of fire and salt beneath shattered towers charred once by dragons. Jon folded parchment. Tell the queen we sail when my wife is strong enough. Edric tipped head. I ride north no further. Snow chokes roads. I remain guest if welcome. Winterfell welcomes any who bend knee to live. Jon gestured to keep. As the bastard of Storm's End led retinue inside, ravens burst from rookery like black petals. One circled low, cawed 3 harsh notes, then winged south. Jon's breath clouded. The tide surged anew. Deep night again. Jon visited crypts, bronze sword in hand. He descended to Lyanna's statue, ice candles flickering. He knelt. Mother. Sister, whichever you were to me, guide this girl and me. The world asks more than I have. Wind soughing through cracks seemed to answer. You have what the world needs, love and steel and sorrow. Bind them. He laid the bronze blade at Lyanna's feet. Breath of dawn. Guard her while I sail. Footsteps behind. Sansa emerged from gloom, cloak ghost pale. Our father would be proud. Jon rose, wearied eyed. Would he? I wed a kraken, serve a dragon, and follow a boy who sees past time. Ben Chow. He would be proud that you bear it. She touched his cheek. When you ride, I rule Winterfell. We will hold the north. He clasped her wrist. Hold your heart too. She smiled small. Lady Stark's heart grows thorns, but still beats. They climbed to upper halls where new banners rustled. Wolf, kraken, dragon, spiral dot. Storm muttered outside, yet fires shone in every arrow slit. Jon paused at nursery. Through door crack he saw Asha asleep, Elana suckling. Candlelight gilded them gold. Peace. Fragile as frost petal. He whispered to silent gods. Let this stand. But beyond horizons, waves heaved. In King's Landing's blackened shell, red priests gathered, murmuring prophecy of bleeding stars. In Old Town's highest tower, the glass candle flared sea green. And far beneath shattered wall, something shifted in tunnel dark. Slow, vast. Stirring from a dream of endless snow. The thaw came early that year. A deceptive breath. Pack ice split on the white knife in loud cracks. Gulls returned. Winterfell's gates swung for the procession. Sleds bearing mother and child. Sailors guarding horn in sealed chest. Dragons overhead casting storm blue shade. Atop rampart, men waved iron spears ringed with dragon glass. Below, children chased meltwater streams between stalls stacked with dried cod. Jon rode at column's head. Asha followed in carriage, babe nestled to breast, steel blue gaze scanning horizon. Behind, Sansa and Bran watched until banners vanished south. On the river road, Jon turned once more to see Winterfell recede, towers etched against snow-scarred sky. He felt the pull of roots embedded in those stones. Yet the tide waited, and the horn must sound. He faced south. Ahead rose hills where the first crocuses glimmered, fragile yet defiant. He nudged his horse, and the procession moved, wheels crunching ice, sails flapping distant where rivers met sea. And the song continued, verse unwritten, carried on winds salt and cold and bright with dragonfire. Ya, Kay. The procession threaded south across a realm thawing in sudden fits and starts, as though spring itself were reluctant to show its face. Bogs steamed where frost had rained a moon before. Meltwater carved throats through snowbanks and whispered beneath brittle crusts, turning roads to treacherous gray slush. Great shaggy horses slogged on, manes hung heavy with ice melt, while sled runners screeched each time they struck bare stone. Yet the line did not falter. At its heart rolled the wide-wheeled carriage of oiled oak, whose shutters bore the intertwined sigils of wolf and kraken. Inside, Asha Greyjoy nursed Elana beneath furs that smelled of brine and pine resin. The babe's eyes followed stray motes of dust as if they were stars, then closed each time the road jounced. Already she slept like a sailor, rocked by storm. Jon Snow led from the front, bronze sword strapped crossback, long claw at hip, horn of mammoth tusk lashed inside a sea chest borne by 4 of the Queen's Guard. The horn seemed to pulse faintly now and again, a heartbeat felt rather than heard. Each throb prickled the hairs on his wrists. He wondered if the babe stirred in answer, if some thread, unseen yet unbreakable, tied horn to child. Bran's riddle gnawed him with every step. Snow shall choose. Choose what? Or whom? On the 5th night, they camped beneath the tumbled stones of Moat Cailin, peat fires sputtering in wind that smelled of swamp and far-off salt. Thick fog crawled from the neck, coiling between ruined towers like pale serpents. The gloam felt watchful. Jon walked picket line beside Ghost, the direwolf silent, save for low growls that rumbled when mists shifted in ways no mortal eye could track. Yet dawn broke without attack, and mist fled before a gust that carried scent of leaf bud and rich mud. Beyond the neck, the wide riverlands opened, green and wounded at once, scars of dragonfire still charred across fallow fields. Messages met them at crossroads inns. One from Sansa. Winterfell secure, barrow knights standing silent watch among barrows, children of the forest whispering deep in crypts. One from Daenerys. She marched east from Fair Market with unsullied phalanxes and Dothraki outriders, encumbered by flooded fords but gaining ground. They would converge at Harrenhal on the first full moon of spring. Another raven, bearing seal of Archmaester Torgon, spoke of strange tremors felt in the citadel's oldest vaults, a thrumming in black stone the maesters could not source. Tyrion's hand added a wry line. Fire and ice make cracks in old walls. Pray they do not bring the roof. 10 days from Harrenhal they crossed the tumblestone. Asha's carriage tarried on the far bank, while Jon rode with advance guard up the river road to scout. The new-leafed willows rustled overhead. Among catkin drift, he caught the scent of wood smoke, not their own. He signaled halt, fingers lifting. Ahead, a low rise girdled with bramble hid a clearing. Ghost slunk into undergrowth. Moments later, the wolf's voiceless warning rippled back along Jon's spine. He dismounted, motioned Tormund and Lyanna forward. They crept through brush until the ground dipped. In the dell below lay wreckage of wagons, Baratheon livery hacked to tatters, barrels split, grain scattered for crows. Among broken spokes sprawled corpses, some in the stag's head brown of Edric Storm's outriders, others armored in battered iron ring mail daubed with red paint krakens. Jon's guts clenched. These were ironborn scouts Asha had sent ahead by river skiff. Flies buzzed thick, despite the chill. At clearing's center a body had been propped upright against a larch, arms nailed wide with dagger blades. Across his bare chest, someone had carved a sigil, a spiral of 8 hooks, each hook a stylized tentacle tipped an arrowhead. The cuts were packed with salt so thick it crusted white. Lyanna swore beneath her breath. Tormund knelt, sniffed. Dead 2 days. No white stink. Killed by living men. Jon studied the sign. Not kraken proper, but mockery. Salt-hooked tentacles radiating from empty core. He remembered Stepstone's rumors. Euron's drowned warlocks raising new banners. Perhaps fragments of the old crow-eyed crew remained, seeking to break the brittle pact of salt, snow, and fire before it hardened. They buried dead, burning those whose eyes showed first hint of pale film, then rejoined column. Word reached Asha. Her mouth became a blade-thin line. That night she sat beside campfire sharpening real blades, teeth worrying, lip raw. All. Jon knelt opposite, lamplight shivering on the bronze sword between them. Euron's rot still drifts, she said. Even dead, the fool pisses in my cup. Jon watched sparks whirl upward toward flat black sky. We cut out the rot when we find it. If they hunt us on land, imagine at sea. Harrenhal sits by water. The god's eyes black mirror, paths for sneaking craft. She spat into flames. I'll not walk my babe into some drowning trap. We set double watch on the shore. Stonefoot free folk no lakecraft. They'll hold nets. And dragons circle overhead soon. Asha exhaled. Shoulders easing, she looked at the babe asleep against her breast. She dreams of waves. Jon. I swear she smiles when carriage sways. She has kraken blood. And wolf? Asha added, smiling crooked. Shall hunt in packs. Jon reached to brush Elana's tuft of night-dark hair. And whatever this path asks, she will walk it with both feet. The horn in its chest gave faint thrum as if answering. They traveled faster next days, flanking ridges to avoid tight defiles. Flags furled at dusk. On open moor above Harrentown, they first beheld Harrenhal's jagged towers rearing like talons against thunder-gray horizon. Spring storms boiled over Lake God's Eye. Sheet lightning, stroking scorched stone. The castle's melted towers still wept black tears, where dragonflame had fused Harren's iron into oozing slag a century past. Birds wheeled through holes burned by Balerion. Now the great hall's roof lay half open to sky. Yet between blasted walls, tents sprouted in neat rows, unsullied spear points glinting, Dothraki horse lines penned, Karstark pavilions and Mormont banners. At center of ruined yard, a stand of weirwoods had sprung. Saplings transplanted by Bran's walkers, their red leaves fluttering like fresh wounds beneath stormlight. Drums announced the Kraken Wolf column. Daenerys rode out to greet them. Silver hair whipping about crown of black steel. Simple and austere. Drogon soared overhead, wings healing, trailing thunderous echo. Behind Queen rode Edric Storm, Tyrion, Missandei, and a line of young nobles wearing makeshift colors. Malisters? Even a Hightower cousin. They had come to witness birth of new accord, or sniff for weakness. Daenerys dismounted before Asha's carriage. Jon climbed down, helped wife alight with babe in sling. Lightning flash whitened her face, but her gaze was steady. The queen bowed. Small, precise, and Asha returned nod, one hand on dagger hilt, the other cradling child. Silence held. Only rain pattered earth. Then Elana cooed. The sound broke tension like glass. Daenerys' lips parted in wonder. She extended gloved fingers. Asha let Queen touch babe's cheek. Elana grasped her finger with impossible strength. Daughter of sea and snow, Daenerys murmured. May fire guard you. They entered Harrenhal's yard in procession. Bran awaited amid weirwood saplings, half supported by Hodor-tall guards in tree-bark cloaks. Ravens ringed branches overhead. He raised unseen wind as Jon crossed threshold carrying horn. Leaves danced in spiral, crimson swirling around child. Some settled on Elana's brow, clinging like drops of blood before melting to water. Perhaps only rain. Yet Jon saw flame's reflection in Bran's eyes. Flame tinged green as drowned godfire. Council convened 2 hours past dawn next day in the hall of 100 hearths, though only 10 hearths still stood intact. Wooden tables ringed broken floorstones, maps weighted by chunks of fused iron-dotted surfaces. Lannister envoys eyed barrowmen. Dothraki stroked braids as they assessed Karstark plate. In the lofted remnants of galleries, crows cawed approval or doom. None could say. Daenerys opened council. She spoke of white nests, stirring under frost fangs, of stepstones raids menacing grain ships, of maesters' glass candles, sounding unheard alarms. She gestured to Jon, who laid horn upon stone before all. When he spoke, thunder rolled overhead, lending each word grave echo. Of Barrow King's gift, of need to sound horn thrice, of second call to deep waters. Faces paled, some scoffed. Yet when Elana was carried forth and the horn throbbed in her presence, scoffers quieted. Its sides sweated salt water that hissed on stone, proof enough. Tyrion proposed plan. A small fleet, swift and unburdened, would ferry chosen to Midgard's Eye where Island of Faces rose, sacred to green men. From there, Queen's Guard and Ironborn swimmers would escort Asha and Child into Black Marrow caves rumored near South Shore. Dragons would patrol skies, unsullied hold bank. The horn would sound beneath water, waking wave root of spiral wound. Bran's words implied risk. If horn failed, the mother's life and babe might feed nascent horror. At that, voices lifted in dissent. Asha slammed dagger into table. Iron sang into silence. "The risk is mine," she barked. "I choose none here." Joan's nails bit palm. Lyanna Mormont pounded fist in support. Tormund shouted free folk cheer. Ultimately, plan passed by narrow assent. At dusk, Edric Storm approached Jon on parapet. "You trust drowned caves?" the bastard asked, stormlight glimmering bronze in his hair. "Storm lords fear depths. Water too quiet." Jon studied lake, rippless under bruise-gray sky. "Quiet hides storms of its own." Edric nodded. "Lions not gathered by chance. Some test your pact." My squire overheard Lannister men speak of claim that Elana's line threatens Southron thrones. Beware a blade in council. Jon thanked him. That night he doubled guards about mother and child. Grey Worm pledged unsullied watch. Yet knives find cracks. 3 nights before scheduled voyage, a scream tore camp. Jon burst from tent barefoot, sword drawn. At Karstark quarters they found chaos. 2 ironborn corpses, throat slit. A Karstark guard impaled on spear. And near waterline, prints of narrow-heeled boots vanished into reeds. Asha counted her sailors. 4 gone. On their pallet, she found a sigil carved into shield plank. Spiral hooks again. Rage lanced camp. Karstarks accused Ironborn. Ironborn bared axes. Jon roared command. Drogon swooped low, shadow scattering men like leaves. Under dragon gaze grudges cooled to sullen embers. Search parties scoured reeds until dawn, finding nothing but shredded scraps of gray cloth, perhaps cloaks torn while dragging captives to smuggled skiff. At council, Bran pronounced captives drowned for dark rite. Each death a thread snipped from tapestry they wove. Asha's jaw trembled with wrath. She demanded immediate sailing lest foe strike again. Jon agreed. Daenerys assented. Tyrion sketched logistics. Next day, they floated barges to Lake's Mirror. Murmurs followed column to shore. God's Eye lay vast, still, opaque as obsidian. At center rose Isle of Faces, its weirwood's red leaves flagged bright against dark. Past rotted pilings a single longship bobbed. Black Wind's sister, Grey Dawn rigged with cloth of gold sail for signal. Unsullied formed semicircle on bank. Archers manned ruined walls. Drogon glided above drooping clouds. Smoke curling from half-mended wing. Jon carried horn wrapped in waxed cloth. Asha walked beside, babe swaddled inside sealskin sling at chest. Her cutlass hung but hand rested on child, not hilt. Grey Worm selected 10 unsullied to guard Jon. Tormund and Lyanna insisted join. Fleet shoved off, 2 skiffs bearing Jon's party, 3 more trailing supply crates and divers in leather armor. Lake swallowed hulls like mute leviathan. Mist swirled, scattering glimpses of drowned towers under surface. Ghosts of Harrenhal's fallen walls. Rowers kept even pace. Water slapped hulls with dull heartbeats. As Isle loomed, willows overhanging, breeze died. Air thickened. Jon tasted copper. The horn vibrated through cloth. Elana stirred, tiny whimper like gull. Asha hushed. They grounded at pebble fringe near vine-draped cave mouth barely man-high. 2 green men emerged, wizened shapes garbed in bark. eyes yellow as lanterns. They inclined heads, made sign of spiral reversed. Counterclockwise, a wound uncoiling rather than tightening. Silent, they parted vines, revealing tunnel slanting into gloom, water lapping at stone. One raised spear tipped in pale obsidian, beckoned. Torches lit, they entered. All narrow, ceiling low. Water came to knees, damp clung cold. Bioluminescent algae painted walls in glimmering constellations. Deeper, water warmed unexpectedly. Heated by fumaroles, the path broadened into submerged grotto where pillars of greenstone rose from depths like drowned towers. At grotto center, a dais of carved basalt jutted above pool's surface. Spiral grooves etched dais top, pulsing faint indigo. The horns thrumming matched. Green men halted at edge, would not cross. Jon, Asha, child ascended steps slick with moss. Torment, Elana. Two unsullied followed. Others formed cordon. Asha unwrapped babe, kissed brow, eyes fierce. Jon drew bronze sword, planted tip in dais notch. Horn he laid beside. He glanced at Bran. Absent save Raven perched on cave rim. Its eyes glowed white sun. Bran watching from Harrenhal through feather and wind. Asha lifted horn. Sound in chamber dropped a hush so deep Jon heard blood beat in throat. She inhaled brine-scented air. Babe whimpered. Horn pulsed hot. Asha placed mouth to rim, exhaled. Sound tore worldwide. No audible note, rather a pressure wave that blew torches out, sent ripples racing ceiling, rattled bones. Spiral grooves flared sea green. Water foamed, churning. Pillars shook, distant caverns echoed thunder. Elana cried, but note changed pitch around her voice, layering lullaby within roar. The babe's wails wove through horn until they became one sound. Half infant giggle, half whale song, resounding through lake's black arteries. Water rose around dais, swirling clockwise. Turquoise light erupted beneath, coalescing into columns of liquid glass. Inside columns drifted shapes, womanly silhouettes with streaming hair of kelp, skin pale as moonlit surf, eyes clouded pearl. They watched, expression neither wrath nor mercy. One extended webbed hand touched spinning water. Ripples became runes that glimmered across surface. Bran's raven spoke through cracked beak. Bind wave to wound. Give salt to seal. Asha stepped forward, blade still sheathed. She drew dagger. Sliced palm. Blood dripped crimson into water. It dissolved like ink, threads twisting round light, knitting spiral grooves. One watery woman glided close, hand passing through column wall to brush babe's cheek. Elana stilled, staring wide. In that moment, Jon felt something pass between child and apparition. A thread taut as hair, shining, then figure dissolved into spray. Water subsided, glow faded, horn cooled to silence. On dais spiral lines now glowed faint silver. Sealed by blood, Bran's raven croaked. Two down dine. One remains. Flame must answer. But other voices rose. Screams from tunnel. Jon scooped child. Asha drew cutlass. Unsullied braced spears. Into grotto burst men clad in mail. Seethed with barnacle. Eyes dead glassy blue. Whites but not mindless shamblers. They moved with purpose. Blades slick with lake slime. Among them strode tall figure in rusted captain's coat, face half skeletal, half drowned gray, one of Euron's drowned sorcerers. Its remaining eye shone cold lapis. Tormund howled, charged. Lyanna followed, jabbing dragonglass spear. Steel clanged on stone, water sprayed crimson. Jon handed child to Asha. Hold fast, and drew bronze blade. Where it passed, water hissed. Blade carved white flesh like butter, leaving steam. The drowned sorcerer raised coral staff, flicked whip of kelp that snared unsullied neck, yanked body into churning pool. Asha leapt, slashing kelp. Staff crackled blue. Sparks lit grotto. Jon met sorcerer, bronze sword, intercepting staff. Metal rang with note like whale cry. Sorcerer hissed. The deep remembers. The spiral must tighten. Jon pushed. Strength from something older than his blood surging down blade. Then let the deep choke. He drove edge through staff. Wood coral shattered, shards sizzling. Sorcerer reeled. Jon pivoted, cut through its throat. Blue light guttered, corpse collapsed. Remaining whites faltered, suddenly rudderless. Unsullied spears found hearts, torment shattered skull. Silence returned broken, only by Elana's soft hiccup. Above, rumble echoed, different from battle, the very cavern groaning. Cracks binded pillars, waterline shifted. Bronze sword still embedded in sorcerer's husk flashed white, then dimmed. Jon wrenched it free. We leave, he ordered. Escape proved chaos. Tunnels flooded ankle, then shin deep. They slogged, carrying babe high. Green men guided with reed torch staves, through alternate passage, leading to west shore. They burst into storm twilight as God's eye heaved, like breathing lung. Great whirlpool formed where grotto lay. From its vortex upwelled plume of phosphorescent water that spiraled skyward before collapsing in rain of shining droplets. When spray touched lake, surface shimmered silver, then stilled mirror calm. From castle walls horns sounded, dragon scales flashed as Drogon banked low, warding unseen foes. But no further attack came. Instead, mist parted, revealing flotilla of small boats manned by Karstark and Ironborn ready to rescue. They rowed back swift. On shore Daenerys waited, cloak sodden with rain, relief stark on face when babe cried healthy. Council reconvened under half-collapsed chapel. Bran spoke through his own lips now, voice trembling with exhaustion. Wave answers. Cold recedes from waters for a time. Last call will bind flame to stone, to sea, to sky. But enemies gather. Stepstone's fleet sails north, bearing priests of drowned spiral. And far in east, rumor of red comet reborn, harbinger of fire's reckoning. He looked at Jon. Snow shall choose. Hold north and guard routes, or ride south where flame will roar loudest. He then slumped. Ravens caught his fall, flapping until guards bore him away. In quiet after, Daenerys met Jon before hearth where only embers glowed. Flame's call is mine, she said. Yet I cannot sound horn. Its voice rejects dragon blood. The babe carries salt and snow, but flame must ride with snow to mountain of fire. I will fly ahead. You must bring her to Valyria. Jon stared. Across half the world. Across the bones of old empire. Her eyes shimmered. There, in Doom's heart, third call will either mend the world or break it for final time. Asha stepped into light, damp hair coiled like dark rope. She will not sail alone. The Iron Fleet goes. Nendo. And the North, added Lyanna. Tyrion sighed. And the imp, apparently. Someone must keep ledgers of apocalypse. Jon gathered Asha and child beneath cloak. The babe reached tiny hand toward hearth. Flame bent, dancing round her fingers without burning. A hush fell on room. When flame withdrew, it left mark on Elana's palm. Spiral uncoiling, shimmering. Jon met the eyes of wolf, kraken, dragon daughter. In that silence he chose. Then we sail east, he said, for fire's final call. Asha's grin flared savage. Daenerys exhaled, as if releasing bated breath held since Meereen. Outside, thunder rolled like drums announcing voyage yet begun. Preparations consumed fortnight. Sails patched. Hulls tarred, dragons rested. Bran recovered enough to gift Jon shard of heart tree carved into amulet. Root to guide sky, he whispered. Sansa sent ravens from Winterfell, promising new sowings in thawing fields. Barrow knights patrolled shadowed barrows. Edric Storm pledged river lords to harry Stepstone's corsairs. In secret councils, Tyrion and Davos negotiated grain routes, Queen's justice, and contingency for failure, Few dared speak aloud. At dawn, when fleet launched, Harrenhal's melted bastions cast long shadows across lake. Drogon wheeled overhead, joined now by Rhaegal reborn from distant archipelago, scales green-gold gleaming. Two dragons roared. Their echoes chased ships down Outlet River to Trident, to sea beyond. Jon stood at prow of grey dawn, babe cradled within nested arms of father and mother. Elana's eyes reflected sunrise. A double dawn, one upon water, one inside her gaze. Behind, banners unfurled. Direwolf snarling, kraken gripping, dragon spreading wings, all encircled by silver spiral opening outward, wound uncoiling toward promise. Wind-filled canvas. Ships leaned into tide. Ahead lay storms, drowned gods, red comets, doom's fire, and choice upon choice written in blood and love. Yet in that moment, with salt spray on lips and child's heartbeat steady against his chest, Jon Snow felt a stillness deeper than gods or monsters. The stillness of a world poised on breath's edge, waiting for song yet sung. He closed eyes, whispered words no one heard but babe and sea. Let it be the song of life. Yeah. Cow. A westering storm followed the fleet out of the Trident's mouth, heaving black shoulders across the sky, as if reluctant to let its prey go. Grey dawn led the van beneath reefs of cloud that clawed the rigging with icy talons. 4 long keel wolf ships flanked her, oar banks beating as one heartbeat, while farther astern the broad-bellied grain hulks and supply cogs lurched in the swell like sleepy cattle prodded toward slaughter. Over all of it, Drogon and Rhaegal wheeled in lazy counterarcs, wings dipping sometimes low enough that spray leapt to kiss scaled bellies before they climbed again on wind, the color of iron. Jon Snow stood at the prow, gloves wrapped round the salted rail. The bronze sword breath of dawn slept sheathed across his back. Longclaw hung heavier than memory at his side. Beneath wool and boiled leather doublet, he felt Elana's carved wolf amulet, Sansa's gift, pressing a steady pulse against his breastbone, as though it borrowed his own heart to drum out warning. Somewhere in the waist, Asha paced between mastfoot and aft castle, barking orders in the clipped, amused snarl that made Ironborn both bristle and obey. She had refused cabin rest. If sea gods want my daughter, they'll have to break my spine first. Jon had learned not to argue. Elana slept in a wicker cradle lashed beneath the mid-deck awning, handmaids never farther than a dagger turn away. For 3 days wind stayed northwest, cold but honest, driving them past Maidenpool's stubby lighthouse and the pearly dunes of the Claw. At night they hove to in the lee of sandy bars. Unsullied pickets ringed the anchorage, torches reflecting dull in dragon eyes above. Men spoke little beneath those eyes. Tyrion, curled in a net hammock on Grey Dawn's quarterdeck, scratched quill notes each dusk. Tonnage of black pine spars consumed in repairs, rations of smoked eel remaining. Number of times Elana smiled that day. For the history he told Davos when caught. Davos snorted that history wanted fewer figures and more prayers. They rounded Duskendale on the 4th twilight, and found the storm again, grown fat on bay heat. Lightning lay stitched purple across clouds. The fleet scattered into ragged Arrowhead, sails reefed. Thunder answered drumbeats of panic. Drogon shrieked a challenge to the tempest, black wings hammering rain. Rhaegal dived after him, green flame rippling across the downpour, before winking out in steam. Somewhere abaft, a grain hulk snapped a mast. Jon caught the crack like bone, and vanished behind a curtain of white, where seas climbed higher than castle walls. He opened mouth to command, but breath of dawn warmed suddenly, vibrating under cloak. Dot. The pulse matched the horn's deep thrumming that came not from deck, but from the heart of the storm itself. Asha felt it too. She lurched up the forecastle ladder, eyes wide, rain sluicing scars. Heave starboard. She roared. All weight to oarside now. The words scarcely left lips when the sea ahead boiled, not from gale but from something thrusting up beneath. Grey dawn veered. Even so, the port bow scraped a rising spine of bone-pale coral. No reef charted on any map. The hull groaned. Ribs popped like teeth. Crew screamed as a shape breached, a tower of barnacled shell, ridged and spiraled, water sheeting from its sides. Not a crack in limb. This was rigid, mineral, ancient. It rose 30 feet above crosstrees before slumping apart into petals that unfurled to reveal hollows filled with phosphorescent blue. The horn within its chest casket answered, thumping like drums underwater. Whites, Jon thought first. Yet no corpse smell rode the gale. Instead, a reek of abyssal brine and something sweeter, decay of things that never lived upon land. The coral petals shivered, sound like whale-keening flooded storm roar, making men clutch ears. Ghost at Jon's side bared fangs, hackles a ridge of snow. He snarled not in fear but fury. Lightning strobed, and within that strobe, Jon saw slender figures clinging to the coral crown. Men, or near enough, gaunt, hair roped in seaweed, skins the color of tidestone, eyes flickering aquamarine. Each brandished long hooks of black chitin. One raised conch horn to fissured lips and blew. Storm-wrenched note to shreds, yet Jon felt it, a spear of pressure through skull. Oarsmen shrieked, dropping sweeps to clutch temples. Grey dawn yawed broadside to wave. Only the wolf ship pilots, ears stuffed with wax as Asha's custom dictated, kept reason. Salt reavers. Asha spat, voice raw with wind. Urine's deep priests made flesh. Jon tightened wet grip on rail. We break them. How, if they break us first? She pointed. More coral spears thrusting around fleet, each budding with pallid reavers whirling hooks on hide ropes. Grain hulks wallowed helpless. Wolf ships fought but were overmatched by height of spines. Lines thrown could not reach. An idea struck sharp as sleet. Call Drogon low, Jon shouted. Burn the coral. They brew water from fire. Asha's brow knit, yet she whistled high. Above thunder, black shadow banked. Flames roiled in night throat. Drogon plunged, white fire jetting, too hot for rain to quench. Where fire struck, coral hissed and cracked, petals snapping shut like maws. Sea reavers shrieked, charred, falling in sprays of molten shell. The horns, thrum faltered. The spire nearest Grey Dawn wavered, then toppled, shattering to slag upon wave. Instantly, storm lost half its fury, as though coral summoned it. Jon saw new tactic clear. He seized prow signal horn, sounded 3 blasts. Wolf ships answered. Dragons stooped, streaming fire across column after column of coral. Where shell melted, water swallowed flames in pillars of steam, but coral would not rise anew. In less than an hour, only 2 spines remained, far to stern, and those retracted into black water like poison quills. Storm dissipated, leaving wreckage. 2 hulks sunk, a shallop stove, a score dead or dying. Yet horizon cleared, and pale belt of the maiden glittered beyond torn cloud. On quarterdeck later, Tyrion coughed brine from lungs. First test passed, it seems. Shall we expect one for every elemental horn note? His joke wobbled. Expect the unexpected. Davos grumbled. He tied off dressing round a sailor's cut. Sea priests ain't new, but coral towers. 7 spare us. Asha inspected hull damage with shipwrights. She returned, soaked, baby at breast. Jon raised questioning brow. She shrugged. She slept through. Kraken blood. But her eyes betrayed tremor of fear. They limped into Tyrosh for repairs, hoping free cities still honored coin more than politics. Painted Taroshi docks gleamed garish even in dawn haze. Walls striped teal and orange. Harbor mouth jammed with cogs plastered purple, green. Guildsmen met them warily. Queen Daenerys' name still stiffening spines despite distance from Westeros. Gold overcame suspicion. While yards hammered, Jon and Asha climbed marmoreal steps of Battery Hill to audience of Archon Moredo. The Archon, mustaches dyed parrot blue, listened as Tyrion bargained over harbor taxes, occasionally glancing at Elana and her mother's sling with something between suspicion and pity. In private after, Moredo slipped Jon's sealed scroll. From Lys, he murmured. paid thrice to reach you. Within, a sigil. Fiery heart pierced by sword. The note brief. Red woman seeks snow and sand at shadow of east. Choose the flame, or the darkness will choose. Jon recalled Melisandre's amber, stare by castle blackfires. He pocketed letter. Repairs cost 3 days. Sailors spent coin at lace winehouses. 2 were knifed in alley and bled purple from Taroshi dyes. Cult assassins. Some said. Mouths sewn into sea spirals with wire. Asha tightened curfews. Drogon perched on battlements discouraged further trouble. They sailed at dawn on wind smelling of lemon and tar. Beyond Stepstone's channels waited Euron's echo. Squadrons of battered galleys flying a squid skull within spiral sun. Battle came swift in jade-green straits. Wolf ships outran most, but grain cogs lagged. Jon commanded from forecastle of Grey Dawn. Bronze blade flashed signals as well as seared flesh. Drogon strafed decks, yet enemy captains had learned. Spilled oil ignited, crafting smoke blankets that blinded dragon sight. Harpoons tipped in dragon glass launched skyward. One grazed Rhaegal's shoulder. Green blood spattered wave. Dragon fury answered. Ships burned to ribs. On fourth clash daybreak, a cog crammed with refugees from burned Tong Tine fouled Grey Dawn's rudder, entwining like wounded beast. Enemy flagship iron sickle closed. Spittle sail crackling. Asha seized chance. Wolf ships formed wedge, rams low. Jon led boarding, breath of dawn cleaving planks to glowing cinders. Whites animated from drowned crews clawed rails, but Blade's light banished them to smoke. In Melee's heart, Asha faced captain. Euron's former thrall, face sewn to mask of squid skin. She drove cutlass through jaw, ripped it free, spat brine on corpse. After, sea smelled scorched hair and pitch. Fleet counted cost. 3 cogs sunk, 60 souls lost, but Stepstone's line was broken. Eastern Passage lay clear. They entered summer sea under moon like shattered pearl. Here water warmed. Breezes carried spice of saffron fields on Lycian coasts. Dragons rode thermals, easier on torn wings. Elana thrived. Her laugh chimed over gull cries, drawing smiles from men hardened by death. Even Tyrion found hope. He fashioned tin rattles shaped like 3-headed dragon. When shaken near Babe, she grasped horns and gurgled. Hope proved short anchor. Beyond Isle of Cedars, sails dark as dried blood appeared. Volantine tremes, orange tigers, emblazoned. Atop foremast of their lead ship, writhed banner of fiery heart. The same sigil from Lys' letter, but ringed by silver spiral half uncoiled. A lipless priestess in red silk hailed in high Valyrian. Urlor seeks his promised. Come to the Black Isle, where doom still bleeds, or perish in shadows. Bendai. Jon answered in same tongue. We sail to end wound, not serve new gods. Priestess smiled, eyes candle bright. All gods bow to light or night. Choose. Volantine ships parted without battle. An invitation rather than threat. Tyrion muttered that zealots rarely part twice. Asha ordered full sails. They skirted Basilisk Isles, avoiding pirate smoke. Echoes of drums drifted. Slave raids thriving anew after Dragon Queen withdrew. Daenerys hissed upon hearing. Jon calmed her. We cannot fight every war. Yet he noted Red Priestess's words. Perish in shadows. Farther east, jade currents turned indigo. Towering storms loomed on horizon. Birthed of Valyrian hot winds colliding with cooler trades. Storms of sorrow. Sailors named them. Charts here lay blank. Doomed scars shifted shoals yearly. At council, Asha spread rough-hide map, inked by ancient Kraken rider. Narrow lane called Serpent's narrow hugging northern fringes of smoking sea. Volcanic vents boiled water. Sulfur fumes killed gulls mid-flight. Yet currents swift would have journey. Debate raged. Davos argued south round safer though longer. Drogon's wings still healing. Should not risk ash cloud. But storms brewing south looked worse. Jon studied Elana sleeping beneath flicker of lantern. He felt horn through wooden deck, faint pulse urging onward. He chose Serpent's Narrow. Day they entered lane air tasted of rotten eggs. Sea steamed like soup. Curds of pale stone floated. Pumice from unseen eruption. Crew wrapped faces in linen soaked with vinegar. Still throats burned. Dragons tired quickly, forced to roost on masts. Nights glowed faint where molten veins ran beneath water, casting eerie underlight. Men whispered of demons swimming. Halfway through lane catastrophe, struck. A vent exploded starboard of flagship, sending tower of lava and scalding brine high as sky. Shockwave slammed fleet. A grain hulk's hull burst. Steam cooked sailors alive. Ash rained hot. Jon on gray dawn felt deck lurch. Fireball debris pelted sails, igniting. He rallied bucket brigades, but sail burned halfway down. Mast threatened to topple. Drogon too exhausted to breathe fire quench. Behind, another blast ripped. Serpent's Narrow living up to name. Coiling and striking. Retreat impossible. Forward all that remained. They cut damaged sails, lashed spar replacements from spare yard and dragonbone. 16 hours later, they escaped lane into calmer blue, dotted by pillars of obsidian that jutted like fangs. A shattered peninsula marking Valyria's outer tomb. Rumor-held doom still roared inside smoking mountains. Yet coastline they beheld was silent, misted. Ruined marble colonnades protruded from jungle that grew where dragons once nested. Verdigris statues toppled into lagoon. Steam rose from fissures humming low, a dirge. Fleet anchored off black sand beach. Drogon landed with thud, tail lashing, nostrils blazing red in twin darkness. Rhaegal perched on Colossus half-submerged, golden eyes wary. Unsullied formed camp among basalt outcrops. Free folk built fire pits fueled by driftwood that burned green. Bran's raven arrived at dusk alone. Feathers singed. It croaked message. Third call at moon door where doom meets sky. Path lies beneath red temple yet unmade. Snow must cut flames fetter. Interpretation vexed council. Tyrion guessed moon door referenced Mount Galion. Crater blown through by quake to reveal moonlight to caverns below. Red temple could be abandoned Valyrian fire shrine dedicated to Vagarian's light, lost in collapse. Only maps older than Freehold might hint. Jon, Asha, Daenerys, Tyrion, Davos, Lyanna, and Grey Worm formed scouting party next dawn, leaving fleet guarded by Karstark and Ironborn. They trekked through jungle where vines fused with warped marble. Orchids sprouted from skulls of stone dragons. At midday they reached cliff overlooking caldera half-filled by turquoise lake, water gently boiling. On far rim stood ruin of temple, pillars blood-red fused glass, roof gone save central arch bearing sigil of 3 spirals nested. They crossed crumbling bridge to dais, where moonlight filtered down shaft in roof. Moon door. Beneath yawning hole, lay pit, descending into fiery glow. Stone steps spiraled along inner wall. Jon secured rope round waist. Asha too, babe left in care of wet nurse back at camp. Daenerys refused rope, fire is mine, and stepped lightly. They descended 20, 40, perhaps 100 feet. Heat soared. Bottom opened into cavern where a river of magma pooled around Obsidian Island. On island stood pedestal of fused bones shaped into cradle. Horn thrummed louder than breath. Elana far above cried in answer. Echo drifted hollow down shaft. Jon's skin prickled. Daenerys stepped onto obsidian. Heat swirled like dragon breath. She placed hand on cradle. "Hear," she whispered. "Sound flame call. And you, Snow, must choose." Jon unwrapped horn. Set it in cradle. Instantly bronze sword rang, filling cavern with note bright as dawn. Flames burst from magma river, forming archway of living fire. In tongues of gold danced images. War of first men. Forging of chains round world's heart. Spiral wound, tightening each age. An opening gaped beyond arch. Corridor of fire stretching into molten horizon. Bran's voice drifted like smoke. Walk the flame. One returns, one remains. Choice binds wound. Daenerys met Jon's eyes. Tears shone. Steamy. I am fire. I remain. Then no. Jon's heart cracked. The world needs you to build after. Let me. She laid burning hand on his cheek. Skin did not burn. No. You carry snow and salt and dawn. You must guide child. She pressed bundled roll of parchment into his hand. Dream of a better wheel. Asha stepped forward, eyes wet though hard as iron. You sure, dragon? Daenerys smiled ruefully. I was born of storm and salt and fire. I have flown enough. She kissed Asha's brow, pressed warm kiss atop Jon's lips, then walked into Arch. Flames wrapped her gently, as lovers cloak. She turned once, eyes bright violet, and spoke one word, break. Then Arch flared blinding. When light fled, flames gone, magma cooled glassy. Pedestal cracked, horn glowing red. Jon knelt, lifted. It felt lighter, as though part of its weight stayed beyond. Roar echoed shaft. Dragons above shrieked. Outside temple sky cracked with pillar of crimson. Comet reborn. Tail lashing day. Fleet cried out. Drogon and Rhaegal streaked upward, wings luminous, climbing after comet until vanished. Jon, trembling, climbed spiral with Asha. At summit air smelled of ash and tears. Elana waited arms of nurse. When Jon embraced, Beyblade hand on horn, and spiral sigil upon her palm blazed white, then faded. She cooed. Tyrion, base-streaked soot, asked, "Where's the queen?" Jon swallowed. "She remains, to mend flame." Voice broke. Night fell early that day, though horizon burned red. Comet traced path westward, toward kingdoms once home. Fleet raised sails minutes after. None wished linger near doom's heart. Asha commanded, voice iron. Jon carried horn to captain's shrine, lashed before prow beneath carved direwolf kraken figurehead. When wind filled crimson canvas, horn began soft hum. A lullaby echo of Daenerys' goodbye. Water around hull glimmered faint orange, lighting journey. Gray dawn led fleet out of smoking sea. Behind them plumes of fire danced sky, yet gradually stilled. Some sailors swore they saw outline of woman atop drifting pillar. Hair whipped like flame, arms raised to hold heavens apart. Others claimed mere fancy. Days later, safe beyond ruins, comet still burned overhead. But sky, otherwise calm. Tyrion brought parchment Daenerys gave. Her signed decree naming Elana Stormkraken, born of salt and snow and fire. As protector of realms future, Jon and Asha, joint regents until child grown. Tyrion named Chancellor, Davos Hand. Bran Lord, Watcher. A new charter, break wheel, build ring. Realm of equals bound not by crown but pledge. Jon watched sun fall, comet gleam. Duty heavier than swords settled on shoulders. Yet within cradle, Elana laughed, fist grasping empty air where comet seemed to hang by her invisible string. "I choose life," Jon whispered to Star. Somewhere in dusk he fancied reply. A dragon's roar fading into dawn. Months later they would dock at Dragonstone rebuilt, banners of spiraled unity snapping. They would kneel among small folk, wolf masks brushing kraken helm, to swear first oath of Ring of Dawn. They would bury what ash of Daenerys wind blew ashore. Set statue of flame glass in God's wood, so roots drank her fire. But for now the fleet sailed under comet's ruby light. Horn of ages singing soft, and world exhaled a breath neither winter nor war. Only waiting. And in hold of gray dawn, next to crate of dragon glass, seeds to plant in shattered fields. Slept child whose dreams rocked oceans. When she woke at earliest gray, waves quieted, as though seas themselves bent ear to hear tomorrow being born.